Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Paid Search Tactics You Need to Maximize ROI in a Tight Economy, presented by Athena and Search Engine Land. I'm your host, Cynthia Ramsaran. Before we begin, just a few viewing tips. If you have any audio issues, click the audio icon on your screen to enable your audio. If you're having any viewing issues, you can use the Q&A section at any time to communicate with us. You can send questions directly to the speaker about his presentation at any time. Without further ado, let's get to the presentation. Joining us today is Gary Galloway, Global Product Marketing Manager at Athena. Welcome back, Gary. It's good to see you. I'll hand things over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that intro and the housekeeping. I really appreciate it. And I've done several of these webinars with Search Engine Land, and I always like to keep the webinars as interactive as you can possibly make it a webinar. So feel free to ping me with questions. Feel free to challenge something that I say over in the chat box, and we'll get to any and all of your questions as they come in. But yeah, as Cynthia said, my name is Gary Galloway, and I head up the product marketing team at Athena. Prior to Athena, I worked at a company called Veracast and at Assertive. And basically the same theme emerges where I help national global brands really manage the search complexities when they're running multiple campaigns at the national level, and they might be running them at the local level, city level, DMA level. And I've also had the good fortune to be an adjunct professor and teach digital marketing courses where I got to create a course and then teach it for 5 years at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And then since COVID happened, I am now doing it virtually through the University of South Florida. So that's a lot of fun to stay really connected to the youthful generation of today. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in to the presentation. And before I get started into the meat of the material, 3 different ways that you can manage and increase your ROI in a tight economy. I just want to tell you very quickly about Athena. Athena is a search intelligence platform, and we really just help brands, marketers, and agencies dominate their competitive landscape. And a lot of times people ask, what is search intelligence? We don't know what that is. And search intelligence really is about carving out strategic insights, competitive analysis for your paid search campaign. There's a lot of amazing intent signals happening with the search campaign. Google has over 100,000 searches every second in the world. So search is still a very important channel to digital marketing. It's something that we're really diving deep into at Athena. So Athena helps a bunch of different brands. You can see all the brands on the screen here. We serve several different industries. We serve retail, finance, technology, automotive, and also travel. And then we also have a huge agency focus where we help global agencies better manage their client relationships. So it's an exciting place to be. I've been there for over a year now, and it's really hard to believe how fast time has been flying there. So not to be doom and gloomy, but it looks like from our perspective, the second half of 2022 might look a little different, right? We've got some big macroeconomic challenges with high inflation, the war going on in Ukraine, major stock market corrections been going on. This is starting to have an impact across a lot of technology companies. You see these almost every day now, unfortunately, coming in with tech layoffs, and just really wanted to remind everyone on the call that search is still a very important channel. And in my eyes, I've devoted my whole career to it, it seems, but it's going to remain an important channel. Most recent Google earnings showed 23% year over year in revenue growth. So that's a pretty big whopping number. And you can really see how important search is. So we're in a good industry. The key takeaway here is with all the doom and gloom noise in the world, just stay positive and just keep moving forward. One of the things that we're paying a lot of attention to is around the Google automations. And especially we're paying a lot of attention to their Performance Max. In fact, I was on a webinar a few months ago with Search Engine Land, and we polled the audience to see how many people are using Performance Max. And I would like to go ahead and do that now, if that's okay, is to get a sense of your engagement with Performance Max. If you're currently running any Performance Max campaigns, then that will be interesting to see from the audience. So if you don't mind, just take a few seconds there to to answer that question. And I'm going to go ahead and share with you some results. Actually, some of the votes are coming in now. And let me give it a few seconds to get a sense of the numbers. Right now, 67% are not running Performance Max campaigns. Now it's 69%. And it's interesting because when we asked this question 2-3 months ago in the webinar, we had, I think, 44% of people were not running it. And this number is holding steady at 68%. So that's really interesting to look at there. So I'm going to kind of share some results with that we got from our users, from our customers. That's okay. We polled 100 of our customers, and these are customers that typically spend more than $250,000 a month in paid search. We work with a lot of global enterprise brands, really complex search campaigns that they have set up. And 71% of them do have Performance Max running right now, but they're typically running it alongside of their existing search campaigns. And then when we ask them if they're satisfied with the performance, 36% of them said it was somewhat worse. What's really interesting, I'm going to take a sip of water, excuse me. What's interesting is you can see there, I love a good radar plot, and you can see the consistency across the responses when we ask them an open-ended question. Tell us about your experience with Performance Max. A large majority of the people highlighted the lack of reporting that's unavailable and the lack of control that's not available in Performance Max. So we have this survey that's closing at the end of July, and we're going to continue to research our customers to just better understand Performance Max. So I thought that was something that was interesting to share with you. What does that mean for you if you are working with Google automations, Performance Max, really just paying attention to the performance of those automated campaigns in Google and really paying attention to generating real business objectives from your campaign. So really, as I mentioned, I'm going to get to the heart of the material. I wanted to talk about 3 things today with you, and really just 3 tactics that you can use to maximize your return on investment on your search campaign. And I'm going to use real world examples from our customers. But the first one is going to be about saving immediate budget from your paid search, and specifically on the brand terms. The second thing I want to talk about is tips to dominate product categories. And then finally, I want to talk about adapting new search term opportunities to scale your content. So let's just jump in into the first one. In typical classic marketing, you're operating between either push or pull. What's important with the pull concept is that budgets are tight, they're scrutinized, SEO is everywhere, there's seasonality spikes. With push marketing, you're not too concerned about cost per clicks. You're not really trying to measure, you're not really paying a lot of attention to that, but you're really trying to measure your total return on ad spend, and it's always on. So both of these scenarios really require the most recent observable data on the search engine results page to make decisions when you do have some level of automation. And in that survey data that I showed you of our customers as it relates to Performance Max, we're going to be sending out a more detailed, I call it the state of the industry report. And it does break it down to search campaigns, shopping campaigns. We even look at display campaigns. So there's a lot more insights to get there. So I'm looking forward to releasing that. So let me go back to the search engine result page. And this is the real world example of Athena. So if you go to Google and you type in Athena London, you can see that we are bidding on a brand term Athena. Now we can choose to turn that off, either to dominate the search engine results page, or we can conserve money. What we've discovered, we have a product at Athena called Brand Activator, and we have discovered that 65% of our customers could save money immediately if they paid attention to that whole SEO and paid search harmony. What the Lone Ranger does is it identifies when you are the sole bidder on your brand term, such in this case, Athena, and you have the #1 organic position. I want to talk a little bit more about that coming up. But in some cases with our customers, they could save up to $2 million in annual savings if they just simply paid attention to that Lone Ranger status. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that and give you some more details. Excuse me. This is a very interesting case study that emerged. Avanti West, for those of you that don't know, they are a train operator in the UK. And during the related shutdown that was related to COVID, traffic and all travel pretty much stopped. So they had to be very clever to save money. So what they did is they identified a bunch of Lone Rangers where they were the sole bidder on their brand term, and they had the organic #1 position. So what they did was very interesting is they took that savings, they saved 32% each month by not bidding on that brand term. And they could have either saved that money, but they reallocated it to some generic keywords and that were very strategic to them. They identified their top 5 most busiest routes and also the most profitable routes. And they put generic terms on those profitable routes, and they were able to grow revenue by 13%. Now, that doesn't sound like a big number, but this is a train operator at the height of COVID. So it was a very interesting use case for Athena's Lone Rangers and what they did with it. So I just wanted to share that. So the quick takeaway from point 1 is to really embrace all the data that you do have available. Identify those brand terms when you're the sole bidder and you have that organic top spot, Lone Rangers. And if you can, figure out a way to automate that whole process, because these competitors will come in and they will go out pretty much in real time. So being able to automate that, mainly turning on and off those Lone Rangers, is extremely important. This is usually when I ask if there are any questions, so I could still a sip of water. So feel free to ping the chat with questions. I saw a few coming in that caught my eye that I can't wait to answer. So the second tactic that I wanted to talk about are really tips to dominate product categories. And this is about really being mindful of cost savings in a tight economy. I know oftentimes we, as paid search specialists and paid search professionals, we often operate in silos with the organic team. So one of the things I wanted to spend some time talking about is that importance of that paid search and the organic harmony, I like to call it. I don't like the word synergy, but when you're working consistently on your SEO and you improve your overall ranking, ideally, in an ideal world, you could typically scale back on paid campaigns. I mean, we all know the numbers. The click-through rate of an organic result, that top position, is nearly 20 times that of paid results. I think it's something like 30% click-through rate on that first organic position. I think the average click-through rate on all paid search ads is around 2%. Feel free to update me or challenge me on those numbers, but those are kind of ballpark rough estimates of those averages. So when these specific terms rank high on search results, it really does give you that opportunity to double down on them and take up more of that search engine results page. And you can use paid search if you are tracking in that direction. The other thing I wanted to talk about is around search competition. And we all know when it comes to search, every business has that desire to get found before their competitors. That's an obvious statement. An emphasis on SEO can really help ensure that you're creating material that informs and draws in your entire target audience. Our research shows that consumers are 130% more likely. Sorry, the chat question came in. I couldn't wait to read it. Sorry, that distracted me. So our research shows that 130% are more likely to buy after reading some type of educational content that they found online. Oftentimes that is found through some type of organic search result. So the third thing here is around campaign optimization. And here I'm going to go into another real world case study around campaign optimization. And you really need to think about optimizing campaigns based on your business objectives. This is a very interesting story with L'Oreal. It's a global brand. What L'Oreal was doing is they were basically running a bunch of shopping ads, and they were trying to drive traffic to their e-commerce site. And they were obviously wanting to get people to purchase in their online store. So they were bidding with their shopping ads on return on ad spend. What they wanted to test was if they bidded on impression share, could they have an impact on their overall market share? So they took a men's fragrance from Avanti, and they did this during a key gifting time frame. So November and December, obviously right up to the holidays, people are thinking about their loved ones and buying them gifts. So Avanti West, I'm sorry, I stuck on the Avanti West case study. I love it so much. Excuse me one second. So what the L'Oreal team did is they tested their bidding strategy, and they changed it from target ROAS over to impression share. And what they were able to do during that time period was to increase their total market share by 116%. So they also added impressions, and they also added clicks on that campaign. Here is a quick side-by-side. September and October was the other time period they used in their test, and you can see they are ranking 4 in total market share at 3.3%. And when you compare that to November timeframe, they now ranked 7.1% in a total market share. So what they've identified is kind of a recipe for new product launches, new fragrant launches, and especially a new bidding strategy during key gift time periods. So they're really starting to duplicate this effort across all their brands. And if you think about L'Oreal, at least in the US, they have over 30 different brands. So they're really able to drive a strategy by just being flexible on their overall bidding strategy when it comes to Google Shopping. The fourth thing that I want to talk about here is around brand infringement. So what brand infringement means is basically when a partner, let's say that you are, well, let's not say and give you a hypothetical example. I want to talk specifically about a real world example we encountered is through Sage. And let me click on this slide, excuse me. So Sage, for those of you that don't know what Sage is basically a company that operates in the UK. And they really help businesses manage accounting, finance, payroll, software. And they have new rivals that enter into their market all the time. So really staying on top of that competitive landscape really requires constant attention and constant effort. So what Sage did is they used an infringement tool that we have at Athena, and they were able to basically identify all the different partners that were infringing on their specific brand name. And they identified 89,000 infringements on a single partner alone over a 12-month period. So Sage is using this infringement tool from Athena to automatically police those brand bidding problems, and when necessary, renegotiate those agreements with their partners. So the results here have been pretty impressive. Just in 5 days alone, they saw a 75% decrease in their CPC for brand terms, and they saw a 33% decrease in partner impression share. So really important trying to manage not only these large campaigns across multiple locations, but when you have 89,000 infringements from a single partner, it's important to pay attention to that, and that really will help drive some cost savings. Sorry, I'm trying to advance my slide. So this is just a simple chart of those infringements. Over time, you can see they were averaging anywhere from 370 up to 425 brand infringements. So they were able to really manage those and to reduce their cost. So the third thing I want to chat about is really adapting new search term opportunities to help scale your content. And there's oftentimes a lot of cost savings built into that. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about these things, if you don't mind. So this is a chart that's simply showing and embracing some of the change that Google is doing from an automation standpoint. So if you're more strategic in this instance, then you might miss out on some of the nuances in the landscape. So what this visualization is showing is we took on a key market in retail and really wanted to understand the messaging and ad copy and if it's actually working. So our models at Athena typically look at click-through rate, click share, share spend, and you'll notice the key shift here in movement toward free shipping and free returns by this specific segment. So if you just opted into your campaigns, you'll likely miss if the market is moving and you're not. So the bit that I really want to pull in as well is if you focused on setting and kind of forgetting, you'll likely miss something. So here, curbside pickup was a key change that we saw, especially during the pandemic and that related shutdown. And I also had the experience of working with some major retailers in the US, think of Walmart, Target, and that really silly acronym, BOPIS, B-O-P-I-S, emerged in a lot of ad copy. BOPIS stands for Buy Online, Pick Up in Store. So that was a really, really popular thing that people wanted based on their consumer changes as it relates to a global pandemic. Sorry for this slide being so busy, but there's a lot of cool takeaways here around not to overlook and be dismissive of some of these ad copy messages when there is some automation taking place. So this particular segment that we looked at, we ran this for a retailing brand, and they really wanted to understand the nuances on calls to action. So it's a very specific nuance, but they really wanted to understand what calls to action were working. And we were able to segment those calls to action based on sentiment, offers, seasonality, incentives, and they can be automatically bucketed into specific buckets based on those different themes. So it's very interesting to see what emerged. And when you look at this, you'll see that a lot of the impressions naturally gravitate toward language like shop and now. And this specific advertiser made considerable ground on clicks and impressions when they started using phrases like discover, now, and find. While these are pretty simple, basic words, understanding and getting it to spot those patterns to see where you're doing it is incredibly powerful. I am changing my slide. Sorry, I keep telling you what I'm doing. I've got a tricky setup here. I'm going to take a sip of water. And here I'm just highlighting and showing you those different buckets, those different themes that you can really get some insight based on your ad copy around call to action, incentives, seasonality, and that sort of thing. So there's also a cool opportunity, and I'm a very visual learner, so this slide especially is really fun for me. So what you can do if you are a visual learner like myself, then this is something that we created in Tableau. We fed the Tableau report with our API. So this is something that if you wanted to replicate on your own, you could use Google Trends in your own dashboards, but it may give you some food for thought and ways to look at that visual. But the green areas in this case are the areas that are doing well from a healthy share of click standpoint. And when you see this overlaid, and where you see this overlaid is in the ad copy, where you have reasonably higher conversions. When they have a radio spot running or a TV spot running, some sort of outdoor element that's running. And what's done is we rank these clicks here in this visual into the relevant market. And you'll see, like in Tampa, Florida down here, the red area in Tampa, Florida, the share of clicks is really going on, it's pretty alarming, the share of click data that's showing up. So if it continued to decline during this time period, there's a total view of market clicks. So we can segment this stuff by search terms and that sort of thing. So very interesting way to visualize your data across multiple cities, multiple DMAs, and that sort of thing. So one of the examples of this, and I really wanted to highlight the Vodafone case study in a real world example in ways that they were very creative in using specific language and specific around specific categories. So Vodafone, if you might not know Vodafone, it's a UK company. They worked with Athena during a key launch of a Samsung cell phone product. So they combined Athena's strategic insights with Google Smart Bidding. And Vodafone was able to maintain a pretty flexible strategy around automated bidding and manual bidding. And that they used Athena search term opportunities and identified 27 keywords that were not being used by their two competitors. So with cell phone launches, it's a very competitive world, a very tight window. So Vodafone was able to identify those 27 search terms and bid on them. And as a result, they were able to increase not only their share, but they were also able to get a 10% sales boost during a very tight launch period. So it's a very interesting way of looking not just at ad copy, but also paying attention to the search terms that are available in those search term opportunities as a way to run your campaign and be flexible between automated and manual bidding, because they were able to jack up their manual bids on those specific 27 keywords because it was important for them to win that auction. And the takeaways here is, to quote Darwin, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones who are more responsive to change. So with all these automations happening in the world of Google, Performance Max, it's really important to pay attention. And again, that earlier slide on Performance Max, lack of control and lack of reporting is a big challenging issue right now. So there's a lot of takeaways and learnings that you can get from your campaigns. If possible, use some sort of visualization if you're working across the C-suite. A lot of people are visual learners, so it's a really cool way to better tell your story. And then also just think about ways to close that loop between insight, action, and return on investment. So that was a lot of the content. That was all the content that I wanted to go through. I am going to turn it over to Cynthia. I know there's a lot of questions that came in, so I'm eager to answer those.
Thanks, Gary. Yes, quite a few came in. So I will start with the first one from David, who wants to know a little bit more about Lone Ranger in more detail.
Yeah, that's great. Great question. And Lone Ranger is a name of report that we have at Athena. And essentially what the Lone Ranger report is doing is it's identifying the cases where you are the sole brand bidder on a specific keyword. So let's imagine Athena in this example. If Athena is bidding on Athena as a keyword, and we have that number one top organic position, that is what we call a Lone Ranger. Strategically, you have to then make the choice if you want to bid on that term or not. I'm not going to say yes or no, because sometimes companies want to dominate that search results page and they will bid on their brand terms, even if they have that number one organic position. What's important to think about is that number one organic position gets 30% click-through rate on average. Those paid search ads get 2% on average. So it's really going to be up to you if it matches your strategy to stop bidding on those brand terms. So we might have a competitor that notices that we stopped bidding on our brand terms. Guess what? They can go into the auction. It's a public auction. They can bid on Athena if they wanted to. In that case, that would no longer be a Lone Ranger because we would have a competitor bidding on our search term. And then we would go back and start bidding on that search, on that specific brand term until we can get our competitor to stop. So it's a very fluid, dynamic thing. And automating that, pausing and starting your brand bidding your brand bids is important from a cost saving standpoint. Again, Avanti West saved 32% of their paid search budget each month by not bidding on that term. So hopefully that answers your question. I kind of cheated a little bit, Cynthia. I'm sorry, but I saw another question that was asked about, you're saying we should or shouldn't bid on brand terms. And I don't think I will ever say you should or shouldn't do anything. But hopefully that also answered that question.
No cheating allowed, Gary. Just
Apologies.
Kidding. Feel free to call out any questions you feel that we should go ahead and ask first or next. But I will go on to the next one from Andrew. For new launch, would you run standard shopping along with Performance Max or only Performance Max?
A, B, or C. So what was the first one? Performance Max only?
Would you run the shopping standard shopping along with Performance Max or only Performance Max?
I gotcha. Okay. And I guess answer C could be standard shopping only. I think right now, just to be completely transparent, I think a lot of the world is in this state of testing Performance Max. And based on the research, and I didn't have this in the summary slide, but a lot of people are discovering that awareness campaigns, like top of the funnel campaigns, work fairly well using Performance Max, because for those of you that aren't up to speed on Performance Max, it's basically automating your campaign across all the Google channels, platforms, networks, whatever you want to call them. So think of search, display network, YouTube, that sort of thing. And with awareness campaigns, display, YouTube video works, quite well, and from an efficiency standpoint. So when you're running a top of funnel awareness campaign, you generally optimize it around delivery of that ad. So either CPM or cost per completed view. When you're starting to look at the performance of Performance Max, that lower funnel stuff where you're trying to really drive conversions, one thing you need to think about, and this is going to go into the weeds a little bit, but Google's rolling out Google Analytics 4. And I think that's happening next September of 2023. And one of the things that they're doing is they're really trying to tighten up all these conversion signals. So I don't know how many of you have, maybe are at agencies and you have clients and you go into their Google Analytics and you look at how they have conversions set up. And I've done that 99 times out of 100. It's a complete mess, what they're calling a conversion. They might have, view our location or view map to our location as a primary conversion. So all these conversion signals are pretty muddied right now, and Google's trying to optimize on those different things. So to answer your question, I would test it, and I would have a very clear objective in place for what you're trying to do around that new product launch. Is it growing market share? If it's a new product name, like in the case of Avanti Beauty, they are launching a new men's fragrance. So gaining market share for that specific thing was important to them. It was more important to them than earning and making sales during that time. So hopefully that answers your question. These webinars are always hard to answer the questions because I can't see the person's face and see if it's registering or not. But hopefully I gave you a very long answer to a very great question. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Gary. Our next question from Lay. When creating campaigns for specific terms, are you letting the direct or the discovery keywords dictate where you're putting the bulk of the initial spend?
That's a very good question, and I need to get more context around that and more specific, a specific use case, really, I think, to properly answer that. It always depends on what you're trying to do, what the industry is, and that sort of thing. I think that would probably be best as a follow-up, if that's okay, Cynthia.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary will reach out to you, Lay, and follow up to your question. Our next question from Andrew, would you look at asset group insights in Performance Max campaigns to pick top headlines and descriptions to pin in search ads?
Yeah, that's an idea for sure, to get those sort of insights into your campaign. The disadvantage to that is it really just gives you insights into the campaigns that you're running. And I have given a presentation in the past, really focused and tailored around Google automation. And we had a little bit of egg on our face with our own Athena campaign when we were testing Performance Max, and there was a lot of glitches in some of the copy. But if it's consistent and if you have a good sense that it's good data, it's certainly a good idea to get some insights there. Again, it's going to be limited just to your campaign. So you will have some limited visibility on your competitors and what might be working for your competitors and their campaigns. These are great questions. I love these. We should just do a Q&A sometime.
Yeah, we can dedicate more time to Q&A. We do have a couple more questions that have come in. From Ryan. Is there a good way to find additional keywords for search ads, as it seems we've run out of keywords to bid on in a very niche market?
Yeah, there's definitely ways, and there's obviously third-party tools out there. You can use Google's tools, and I'm sure you've exhausted those. There's third-party tools out there like Athena, not to make this a complete plug for Athena, but we do have a product called Search Term Opportunities, and we're actually relaunching an enhanced Search Term Opportunities. What Athena does is we basically have 30 physical sites around the world, and we index the first page of Google search results. I know on your phone, first page doesn't mean anything, but we're able to index that first page and really get a glimpse from a global perspective of what everybody is doing across all the different industries. So you might feel like you've run out of keywords to bid on, and your market might be really niche. It would definitely be worth a more detailed conversation to understand what market it is you're in, and that sort of thing. So that was a great question.
Thanks, Gary. And what are some strategies for finding brand terms?
So I'm assuming these are brand terms for your own brand. You could obviously use the Google tools. They're great. Auction Insights got some good features to it. You could look at your own Google Analytics to see how people are arriving on your website. And again, there's also good third-party tools out there. One of them, which is Athena. Sorry, I'm trying to not sound like a cheesy salesperson because I'm not.
Well, it looks like we've come to the conclusion of our webinar, Gary. Thank you so much for your engaging presentation. And if we didn't get to your question or comment, or if Gary will follow up with you, we'll be sure to pass them along to Athena.
Yep.
On behalf of Search Engine Land, I'd like to thank everyone in our audience for attending today's webinar, and we hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Thank you.